how much you owe.
Handwritten note.
Sure.
Or physically.
Energy.
That creates the lid in everybody.
So if you and I disagree on something, then you must be erased and banished from life.
So how does
I'm just gonna sit here and drink this water.
Hi guys, thanks so much for watching Sam Speaks and tuning in today on Sam Speaks radio podcast on iTunes. Today we have Josh Tucker of Anchor Real Estate, and we'll be talking about how to really break into the athlete-client world. How do you get athletes as clients? How do you break into that world and make things happen? Thanks for joining us today.
Definitely excited to be here.
Yeah, so give me some background. You know, how did you even get connected with athletes? What's the whole history behind that?
All right, so for me it kind of started through NASCAR. So unlike my transition out of NASCAR into real estate, my transition into NASCAR was not as well planned or executed, I would say. But it started at a real young age. Probably when I was as young as 4, I realized quickly that I enjoyed taking things apart and putting them back together. I was very curious and wanted to know how things worked. I remember, I think when I was 5 years old, I snuck into my dad's garage and stole a bunch of his tools, and then went in the house and took my mom's vacuum cleaner apart to figure out I didn't know how to put it back together. So mom was real upset. Dad had to jump in and save the day. But it kind of transitioned as I grew a little older. I became very passionate about cars, and so went through college. Was living in Austin, Texas at the time. I was maybe 22 years old, and I was working for a software company in Austin. Typical 9 to 5, Monday through Friday job, desk job. I had my own cubicle, and I realized quickly after about a year that wasn't what I wanted. I knew I still had a big passion on cars and you know, mechanical side of things. So I just kind of on a limb packed my bags and had a little bit of money in the bank and moved to Mooresville, North Carolina to pursue a career in NASCAR. Didn't really know anybody, didn't have family there. But knew that you know, I was motivated and dedicated, and that's what I wanted to do. So I started knocking on a bunch of doors. I got in, you know, worked my way up from the ground floor, and enjoyed a 10-year career in NASCAR. And then, you know, through that career, I realized that after probably about 7 years, you know, it's a very, you know, there's a lot of pressure in the NASCAR world. There's a lot of you know, stress, a lot of travel involved. It's very hard to live, you know, a normal life. We stayed anywhere from 175 nights a year to 200 nights a year in a hotel.
Oh, wow.
40 weekends a year we were gone. So after about 7 years, you know, I started trying to plan my exit out of NASCAR.
Yeah.
It's a young man's sport as well.
Yeah.
And after you're in it for 7 to 10 years, you know, there's always somebody younger that's willing to come in and do it for less money and work harder. So I started looking around through different industries and insurance and vendors of NASCAR and you know, what I wanted to do on my exit out of the sport, but to also be able to still engage in all the people that I had spent 10 years with or 7 years with at that time in my new career. So I looked at a lot of different opportunities and you know, it seemed like every one that I looked at initially, whether it was insurance, there was a deal at that time with Nationwide Insurance, so they, you know, gave insurance to all the NASCAR hard card holders, so I knew I couldn't really break in there. I looked at car sales, but everybody in NASCAR has a deal with a manufacturer, so, you know, most people in NASCAR don't really go to a dealership to buy a car. They go right over to the dealership and go right to the company. Then when I started looking at real estate, I kind of realized quickly that a lot of the people in the NASCAR industry didn't really have a dedicated agent that, you know, that they felt a loyalty to, but also that knew them and knew their schedule and knew how they operated, knew what their life was, knew, you know, the inner workings of that industry. So then really I spent the next couple of years kind of planning that transition, becoming licensed and you know, going through the processes of, you know, where I want to hang my license once I get it, and you know, how I want to transition out of NASCAR into real estate full time.
So you kind of then worked backwards. It wasn't necessarily that real estate was your passion at the time. It was more of that's what made sense and you wanted to fill a void.
Yeah, and that's true. And you know, I kind of always had a passion for real estate, but it never really dawned on me that it's what I wanted to do until I really jumped in and did it. You know, I always knew, you know, even when I was traveling the NASCAR circuit and hanging out with all my friends, real estate was always a topic of discussion, and anytime it was being discussed, my ears tuned in. You know, I knew that I always kind of enjoyed, you know, talking about real estate, keeping up with real estate, but I never really knew that it would become a passion of mine on the buying and the selling side, and you know, helping people, you know, pursue those dreams until I really jumped in and did it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think it's always interesting because prior to real estate, I actually managed nightclubs, and everyone had always asked me, well, how did you get all of those clients that you knew and that you met to then be your real estate clients? So how did you get your sphere of influence and your contact and your database? How did you introduce them to Josh the realtor?
Yeah, it was kind of tough, right? Because it's two totally different.
Yeah.
You know, and I wasn't even on the business side necessarily of NASCAR. I didn't go to NASCAR dressed in a suit. I was on the mechanical side. So, you know, I was in the garage. I was working on the cars. My hands were dirty. You know, my arms were bruised up. You know, burn marks all over me all the time. So to then go to all those same people that I was battling in the garage with daily and bumping elbows with and you know, getting dirty with to show up in front of them in a suit and cleaned up and,
a little different.
and yeah, you know, I mean that was kind of a transition that a lot of them, you know, didn't understand immediately. But I think the one thing that they did understand was through my 10-year relationship with a lot of them, they knew that whatever I was going to do, that I would try my hardest.
Right.
You know, and that you know, there was a lot of trust already built up with these people because I went to battle with them. You know, I mean, NASCAR can be a dangerous sport. You're jumping off the wall in front of race cars that are coming in at 70 miles an hour, and so you really develop a team atmosphere with a lot of those folks, and you develop a trust. They're like family. So while it was different in the regards of, hey, I'm not, you know, changing tires with you anymore, or changing parts on the race car in between practice, or doing those things. I'm just kind of jumping in at a different role and helping you, you know, on the business side now rather than the personal side or the race side.
Would you say that did you call everyone? Did you email everyone? Did you send them, you know, a personal note? What exactly did you do to tell them that you were in real estate?
Yeah, the big thing that I kept doing was continuing to travel to NASCAR races, you know, and stayed in front of them personally. You know, I didn't feel like, you know, just sending them a letter or posting it on social media that, hey, I'm a realtor now, was sufficient. Certainly those avenues have helped me now, but initially it was still going, you know, I had enough connections to where I could still go to races, and I still do today. But initially it was going on the weekend still, but instead of, you know, working with them on the race car, I was staying in front of them and showing them, hey, here is who I am now, and this is what I can still do to work with you and help you. And it, you know, it really seemed to work that way.
Right. So you've worked with some really big name drivers. How did you get in front of them? I mean, because especially if you were initially working more, you know, in the fixing or repairing cars, I don't know kind of that scenario, but do you get to meet them, and then how do you even get to that point?
Yeah, so I mean, you do get to meet them, and it, you know, it almost becomes a family, even with the driver per se. While the driver's not staying in the hotel with you, and they're not traveling in the rental cars with you, you know, they have their own buses that stay at the racetrack, and their families come. Our families didn't get to come, but it does become, you know, they develop a lot of trust in their team. You know, they're trusting us to assemble the cars correctly so that they can go out on the very first lap of the weekend and run 200 miles an hour into the corner and know that, hey, I'm safe.
Yeah.
You know? So you do get to know the driver that you work with, but you don't work with all of them. You know, I mean, through my 10-year career, I worked with probably 6 or 7 different drivers. But just being in the same place as them every weekend, it becomes a facial recognition, right? So while I didn't know at that time a lot of the drivers, I knew them by name, but they may not have known me by name. They knew me when they seen me.
Right.
And the interesting thing was, after I got out of real estate and started showing up in the race, or got out of NASCAR and got into real estate and started showing up at the NASCAR races in civilian clothes and not in a race uniform, they recognized me and they would stop me and they'd say, hey,
Yeah.
I don't remember your name, but I know that I know you. I've seen you in the garage for 10 years, but now you're in jeans and a dress shirt. What's the deal? So I got to tell them my story that way.
Yeah.
But that didn't quickly lead to getting them as clients. The big thing that I learned in working with athlete clients, whether it's NASCAR, I've sold to a Carolina Panthers player, I've sold to some Charlotte Bobcats. The biggest thing that I've learned is that it's not necessarily that athlete that you're trying to win over.
Right.
More times than not, it's their business manager or
Right.
somebody that's doing the transaction business for them.
Someone, that's handling the money.
Right, exactly. So that was one of my harder transitions that I kind of jumped out of NASCAR and into real estate thinking, hey, I know all these people and I can go to some of these big name drivers and say, hey, me, let me help you with real estate.
Right.
They do know me and they want me to help them with real estate, but their always response is, okay, yeah, here's my business manager's phone number, call him, and he handles all that for me.
So how are you winning them over?
That's the harder part, right?
Yeah.
Is figuring out, hey.
The person that doesn't know you. Then
Right.
you're kind of back to square one.
Right, exactly. And you kind of got an in because you can call him and say, hey, Jimmy Johnson or Dale Earnhardt Jr. or Carl Edwards or whoever it is gave me your phone number,
right?
And asked me to call you. I worked with him for several years in the NASCAR garage, and we were talking about opportunities in real estate. So you kind of have an in, but at the same time, those people are very protective. They're there for a reason. They're
Everyone's
paid by
out
that
to get
person,
them.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So they don't let their guard down. So it's just about winning them over and kind of instilling in them the same trust that I've already built up with who they're managing, and it's taking them out for dinners and it's, showing them that, hey, I'm a human, I'm here to help. I'm a friend, I'm trusted. So it's not something that happened overnight, but it's, something that, takes a little while to build up, but once you have that trust with the business manager, you're typically pretty good. And I've also found that, especially in the athlete world, even just outside of NASCAR, within Charlotte, within our sporting communities, the business managers know business managers. So
right.
It's almost like once you get in with the first couple, it's easier then because then you can say, hey, I know Tony, so-and-so's business manager, and they call Tony, and Tony says, oh, yeah, we've done deals with Josh, and he's a real good guy. And so, it's kind of getting that first one or two, and then, it kind of snowballs from there.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have a company of 10 right now?
I do, yeah.
And do you operate independently from everyone, or are you more of a team?
Well, we operate independently in a sense, but in a team as a sense, right? So we're very collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
We work together on every listing. Very rarely will you see one of our anchor real estate listings with just one realtor's name on it. And a lot of the time we co-list with the agents in our company. But we are independent in the sense that I own Anchor Real Estate with Greg Biffle, but I'm not the only one in the firm that lists.
Right.
So all of our agents can help buyers, all of our agents can help sellers. So sometimes when people in real estate think about a team, they think of one leader that's doing all the selling and generating all these leads and then feeding a team of agents. And that's not really how my brokerage isn't ran like that. But we're a team in the sense that we're very collaborative and we work together very closely.
Right.
Yeah.
What expectations do you have of agents who want to work for your company? What are kind of like 3 main questions that you ask if somebody walks in your door and says, I want to work for Anchor Real Estate?
Yeah. I think we like to hire new talent, new agents. Not saying that we don't hire the seasoned veterans that are doing millions of dollars a year already in real estate, but we look for somebody that we can kind of teach. I feel like it's easier to kind of teach somebody from the start rather than to try and get rid of somebody's bad habits.
Right, of course.
So we really try to look for a younger agent that is coming in kind of new to the business, but maybe in a past industry, knows a lot of people or is well networked.
Do you try to focus on getting agents that are also connected into the athlete world?
We do, yeah, yeah, we do, but not solely. The athlete world while it's great, and even the world of NASCAR, we like to diversify a little bit. We
Sure.
don't want to hang all of our cards in one arena. So while we do represent a lot of athletes, we want to represent a lot of small business owners, and we want to represent a lot of corporate executives. We have Bank of America is headquartered in Charlotte. We have Lowe's Home Improvement headquartered in Charlotte. So we got a lot of Duke Energy. We got a lot of big corporate companies in Charlotte, and so we're also trying to grow that way, where we're seeking out agents that are connected in them ways as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was the first deal that you did? And everyone always remembers the first deal.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Absolutely.
So what was it exactly, and how did you grow off of that deal? Because I think that's always something that somebody wants to figure out. Okay, I got my first deal. How do I use that deal to now grow on that?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So my first deal, I had a couple of listing appointments with bigger deals, but nobody wanted to be my first deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the first one was actually pretty small. It was with a NASCAR person, but he's not a driver. He was an engineer for one of the drivers for a team. We closed for $175,000. So it was a very modest, very, but I worked that deal probably harder than any deal I've ever worked before, just to say that I got it, just to say, hey, I was able to close it, and it was successful. And he went out and later, told everybody else that, hey, I know while my deal was very small in comparison to some, Josh did a great job and was able to, do everything that he set out to, or that he said that he was going to do. So I think, I don't know, the first deal for me didn't happen right away either. So I left NASCAR, at the end of the 2012 season, started real estate full-time in January of 2013, and I didn't close on that first house until the end of May. So I went 5 months without a closing.
Wow.
So
did you prepare yourself for that?
I did. I did. Yeah, I did. I prepared myself to be okay for up to 12 months, if I had to. I had confidence and faith that it wasn't going to take that, right? But, there could have been some other first deals maybe prior to that I missed out on because I wasn't maybe prepared as well on the presentation side for listings or things like that. But my first deal was a listing. I did represent a seller. A lot of people's first deal are on the buy side. So this was a seller. I helped him sell, and it really kind of catapulted me, because it was like all I needed in my NASCAR garage, in the NASCAR industry, all I needed was that first person to go and tell everybody that, hey,
right.
I went out on a limb and helped and had him help me, and he did a phenomenal job.
Right.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's funny how, you get that first deal and then it can just spread like wildfire. As long as you do good by that first deal,
Yep.
you get people talking.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually had dinner with that engineer that was my first deal here several months ago, earlier in the year, and at the time he didn't know he was my first deal, and I told
Usually
him.
they never do.
Yeah, so that wasn't one of my selling points. Hey, let me be your first deal, right?
Let me experiment.
Yeah. So he didn't know until we actually had dinner. We had dinner numerous times since then, but it was just kind of a casual conversation over dinner, and I told him, man, I still owe you a lot, for being, my first client. And he's like, whoa, wait a minute, I was your first client, so. But so it was kind of funny, but it does. It just snowballs, and he's become a great referral source for me. I mean, he runs and tells everybody that this is what I do and how good I am at it, and I've probably gotten 4 or 5 or 6 other referral deals, directly through him since I sold him his house. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Josh, thanks so much for being a part of the show today. How can people connect with you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. My handle on all of them is LKM Broker. You can search by my name as well.
Perfect.
LKN's Lake Norman, so we do a ton of business on the lake there, just north of Charlotte, which is where our luxury market's kind of honed in. All the athletes like to live. But yeah, LKM Broker, social media, and you'll find me.
Awesome. Thanks again for tuning in to this week's Sam Speaks. Again, make sure to download the Sam Speaks radio podcast on iTunes and check in each and every week. Thanks so much.